So, welcome everybody. My name is Tony Hall, officially from Navigator Consulting. We are specialists, recruitment industry growth consultants, and we run our Captain's Table group. Every month we try and put on compelling topics with great speakers, and very pleased I'm going to be introducing Brett Iredale soon. But first of all, I want to thank you very much for being here, and also to thank our supporters that have made Captain's Table possible over the years. JobAdder, obviously Australia's leading recruitment management system. We're going to hear more from Brett today, but from a content perspective, not about JobAdder. But it's just ironic that JobAdder has been put through some of its toughest tests during remote working, and I haven't heard of any glitches of all the companies and the clients that I work with on JobAdder. So that's really, really good. Thanks to A Positive too, who support us. They're coming into their own during this market. They're supporting clients with payment terms, both recruiters and recruiters' clients. They've got some really good cash flow financing products that are low cost and really impactful for this environment. We've got DigitPro, who are absolutely flat out being specialist bookkeepers to the recruitment industry. They couldn't be busier now handling all the JobKeeper stuff and and all the ATO stuff that goes around that, and the reporting, doing some really good work there, Michael and his team. Also, William Buck, who have joined us this year. They are specialist accounting, a mid-tier accounting firm that are specialists in the recruitment industry as well. So they've been helping a lot of our recruitment industry clients to really drive their business forward and offer a lot of great advice, not just your typical compliance work. And I'm also pleased to welcome a new supporter that's replaced Succession Plus that was supporting us before, and that's Seaforce Global, which is Maya Davis's company. Maya's on the video today, and Maya, thank you very much. Maya is from the Philippines, lives in Melbourne, specialises in providing offshore staff, not to replace staff of recruitment owners, but to support owners, to support staff to be more productive and spend more time doing what they do best, which is the recruitment side of things. And Maya's got a great team offshore that are very experienced and really want to work for Australian companies, because then they don't have to work the night shift for American recruitment companies. So thank you all for being here. It's my pleasure to introduce Brett. Many of you will know him. Brett has been a great contributor to our industry. He's a former recruiter himself way back. He's now a tech wizard. He runs a very, he's got a team of over 100 staff around Australia, New Zealand and globally. And he's got one of the world's leading recruitment management systems, no doubt. But Brett, really happy to be here with you today, and thank you for sharing some of your knowledge on our topic, which is around remote working. And you've got a very unique insight for us here, Brett, because you've got literally thousands of recruitment clients that you are talking to regularly, and you see information on what's happening with them. But then you've also got a sizable team yourself, which is as big, if not bigger, than most of the companies that attend Captain's Table. So thank you very much for being here. You've done some research. You've been very generous in sharing that research recently. What have you found out so far as COVID-19 goes and the world of work?
Well, it's a broad question. I guess the main thing I would say is that it's really important that every company and every recruitment agency owner is looking at this through their own eyes and not worrying too much about what other people are doing. What I'm seeing at the moment, and we're all seeing, is you've got leaders out there, and then you've got people with the title of leader who are really just following everybody else's lead through this period. So you've got people like Nikki Beaumont, who have introduced 4-day working weeks as a way to try and manage their way through this, and are sharing their insights with us as they go through the process. You've got people like Peter Aitchison from Chandler McLeod, who was just published in Shortlist not 2 days ago, I think 3 days ago, talking about the fact that they're moving to a end-to-end digitized agency model, and this COVID this experience has really brought forward their activities in that regard. So it's just great seeing certain people in the industry really step up and lead, and more importantly, share what they're finding, because I think that's how we're all going to get better and make better decisions.
Oh, look, definitely. And you and I were just discussing beforehand that as far as business travel goes, we've had to go to video as far as connecting with people. And I don't know about you, but I'm finding I can connect probably just as well, if not better, over video than being tired and staying in hotels and getting on planes and rushing around to meetings. It's actually working quite well. What's your take on it?
I completely agree. I couldn't agree more, and it's just so refreshing to hear people who, I guarantee 3 or 4 months ago would have been arguing black and blue that you can't replace face to face with video. In fact, I've been having the conversation for years with customers and prospective customers, and I just think it's great that we've all been forced to figure it out. And now, by and large, the industry is saying, including job seekers. The job seekers are saying, actually, we like it better too, because we don't have to get up in the morning and go and hop on the train. We don't have to pretend we have a dentist appointment when really going to, they can fit this stuff in their day much more easily now. So,
well, they can.
And it's here to stay.
Yeah, and they're quite accessible now because they're working from home and they can pretty much take calls from recruiters too, can't they?
Exactly. You can do multiple interviews a day now and nobody would know.
But you put in the extra hours to compensate for the time you've been spent doing that, right?
Well, this is the interesting thing, because when you actually look at the average day of a life, or the average day of an office worker in a city, it's incredibly inefficient. I'll give you an example, something I was just playing around with this morning. I'm just going to share my screen for a second.
Oh.
Can you see that?
Just 1 second.
Right. Just confirm for me, Tony, you can see that?
No, just going to make you a co-host. I've just done that. So you got to try it one more time.
Okay.
There we go. It's coming up.
Right. All right.
Right,
So
yeah.
I'm just going to share this little graphic that I did this morning. Something we've talked about a lot internally here at JobAdder. When you actually look at the average day of an office worker, this is an average day that we've sort of put together that I think resembles most people working in an office job in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane. Something along the lines of 6 o'clock or 6:30, you'd be waking up. 7:30, you're heading off for your commute. 8:30, roughly, you would get to work, turn on your computer, have a chat with your colleagues, fill up your water bottle for the day, organise your desk. Maybe by 9 o'clock, you've opened up your email. You're just starting to now get into it, read some emails and do some work. 10 o'clock, a colleague comes by your desk and invites you for a coffee. 12 o'clock, and then you come back to work, of course. Then 12 o'clock, you've got lunch, maybe the gym, maybe a run around the park. 1:30, you're working again. 2:30, you've got a pointless meeting. Now, I've been very generous. I've only included one pointless meeting in this example because I try and minimize those in my day, but we all have them. Then, of course, in the afternoon, you've got a coffee break or you find some chocolate to try and wake you up. And then from 3:30 to 5:30, you're working. You might have a bit of a walk around the office, a few yawns, and potentially watching the clock. 5:30, you head home again, and 7 o'clock, you arrive home tired and unfulfilled. So what you're actually looking at there, and I don't think that day is too unrealistic for any of us on this call today, what you're actually looking at there is roughly 1 hour of work in the morning before your coffee break, and then about an hour and a half before lunch, another hour of work after lunch, and then meetings, coffees, and then an hour and a half in the afternoon. And again, I think I've been quite generous in assuming that we're doing high quality work in that amount of time. So what it actually represents is something along the lines of a 13-hour day from when you wake up to when you get home, in order for you to perform 5 hours of productive work. Right. So for me, that's, and as I said before, you may look at this and say, no, I get more done than that. Others would say, no, I definitely get less done than that in a work day, depending on how many meetings you have. But that's fairly accurate. And so when you look at what we can now achieve, how much more work we can get done, and how much more time we have in our day when you take all of that stuff out, I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. As far as productivity goes and flexibility, I mean, all the benefits are there. Time wasted traveling, the cost to travel. There's been a lot of studies showing that over the years, it's thousands of dollars out of people's back pocket that they're spending in that commute that's not reimbursable.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, the food we eat when we're at work now, again, I'm generalising, but the food we eat tends to be not the same sort of quality that we would have if we were making food at home. It tends to be more expensive. It just goes on, and I think, you know, we're all completely aware of this now that we've been operating for 3 months, but it is important to talk about it so that we don't sort of forget those things before we make decisions.
Well, I think it's very important to talk about it, because when we come out the other side, it's not going to just snap back to exactly as it was before, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit now as we go forward. But what I wanted to ask you next, please, Brett, is your business, right? You've got 100 plus staff globally. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of how your business has transitioned?
Yeah, we're fairly lucky in that one of the core tenets of our business, or two of the core tenets of our business when we founded JobAdder 10 years ago, were paperless and softwareless from day one. Not even sure if that's a word, but no software that has to be installed on a machine and no paper in the office. And so those two seemingly small things, if you're diligent with implementing them in your company, you don't need an office, and anybody can work literally on any machine anywhere. And so for us, it was fairly straightforward. We just told everybody to go home, and that was it. And it's worked a treat. But we also had another advantage in that we had 20% of our existing team already working remotely. So our employees in New Zealand, the US and the UK and Melbourne already work remotely. We haven't put offices in place in those places because the teams just don't want them. So
yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I was just looking at people and could send a note to say you forgot to include the time spent resolving IT and database issues as well. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Don't start me on that one.
But look, Brett, I didn't cover this off with you before we were going to have this conversation, but I do remember, I think it was in an airport lounge somewhere about 2 years ago, you vowed to me that you would never have a big office again, and then you got a really nice new office in Bond Street, which is great, and you've been very generous giving that to us to run Captain's Table out of Sydney with, and now you're forced not to go into that fantastic, beautiful office. What are you going to do next?
Yeah, this will be the last lease we ever have, I think, at least on a large office. So I'll give you some background on that. Actually, the board vetoed my request to not have an office when we moved to our last office. There was just some people that felt uncomfortable with moving to completely remote. Internally at JobAdder, we were very comfortable, and we look back at that now and think we should have really pushed that harder and forced that to happen, because it was the right move 3 years ago. Look, now we have these great big offices, and as I said before, I've given everyone at JobAdder the option to come in and work anytime they want, provided we apply the spacing. And just for the benefit of everyone who is here watching, I'll show you how they've responded.
That's incredible.
They're voting with their feet. They haven't come in. There's 2 people here today out of 100 in the office, and that tells me that tells me everything. You know, they for all the pros and cons, ultimately, when you give people the choice, provided that they're also working and being productive, which I believe my teams are, then they're going to vote with their feet. And I think that's a really important message for recruiting, because, you know, when we're looking at attracting and hiring people in future, they are going to vote with their feet, and they just won't go and work in places where they're not able to get the benefits of working from home if those things aren't available.
So you talked about productivity there, and there's been a lot of talk about productivity as far as work from home goes. In your specific case, how have you been able to maintain that productivity?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things, Tony. And I think, so what I've done is I've put the onus on my team leaders. We've really spent a lot of time working with our team leaders and asked them all to step up. And I ask them each week to step up for me, and they really have. We had pretty diligent, you know, hardworking team leaders before, but it's very different managing by site as opposed to managing exclusively by deliverables. And we've had to make that change to not worrying so much about whether we can see them and whether they appear to be productive, but what are they actually delivering every day or every week? And just making that complete shift to only focusing on deliverables. And of course, mental health, and, you know, team leaders spending a lot more time asking people about, you know, their personal situation and making sure they're all okay. So yeah, making the team leaders accountable, and then me holding those people accountable every week has been the key for us, and that will continue to be the key going forward.
I wonder whether any of us prefer to work when we really know what's expected and what we are to be held accountable for, rather than having it, quite generic and that we're just drifting along as usual. Yeah, so it might give people focus.
Mate, I agree. I think offices, as I said, they're a 100-year-old concept. It's the modern day white collar factory, and we do manage by sight, whether we think we are or not. Even the best of us, best managers out there, tend to just think, oh, look, there's my team. They all appear to be busy. Everyone appears to be doing their work, and they all came in this week. Great. There's good things happening, and there's a good vibe in the office. But are you actually delivering as much as you could be? As a unit? And when you take all that other stuff away and just bring it purely back to deliverables, it's so much easier. And I definitely think employees are happier because, as you said before, they will get a lot more satisfaction out of knowing that their work has been measured and that they've delivered in the week what they were asked or expected to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the social interaction and maintaining culture? How have you handled that at JobAdder?
Yeah, so I've actually just this morning, actually, I've asked all of my team leaders to start bringing each team back into the office for half a day a week, starting from next week. So I want each team, which is typically 5 to 8 people, I want each team to be in the office for half a day and not to bring their laptops or do any work sitting down, but to do their stand-ups, to do a review of how things are performing, and just to have a pizza together and socialise as well. So we're just going to start with that. I think half a day is plenty for now. We don't want to shock people's systems too much, but if each team comes in for half a day, then they can get the socialising out of the way and reconnect with individuals. But also as executives in the company, we can get around to those teams when they physically come in and spend time with them that we can't do as easily now.
Yeah, no, really good. And a lot of companies have been using this time. This extra time is really a gift when you think about it. The travel time and just the travel time alone, and the pointless meetings that you talked about that we've all had to suffer through. What have you done to improve your business with this extra time that you now have to be able to do development?
Yeah, look, we've implemented quite a few new systems. We've implemented a new product in our engineering team. That started before COVID, but we've really rolled it out in great detail, replacing Jira and the Atlassian suite, which we weren't finding to be too effective. We've also rebuilt our website during this time, so we've kept our marketing team extremely busy. Thanks, Christina. I think you're on this call. In fact, I'm actually holding that up now because I have to review it before it launches. But that's been a huge project that we've managed to complete and knock off during this COVID time. We've also implemented dashboards for every single team. So I now have control management dashboards that show me the performance against deliverables for every single team in the business. So it's very simple each morning and each evening for me just to click through the teams, and just with a series of dials and charts, I can see exactly how each team is performing. And if there's any red flags, we can see it quite quickly. The other thing that our teams have told us when we've surveyed them is that they feel that we're communicating more effectively now as a company than we were before. So that's very counterintuitive, and it came as a bit of a shock to me because I felt like we were doing a great job with our communication here, but for people to say, actually, no, we're communicating better now was really eye-opening. I guess because we've just really forced it and made people talk more than they previously perhaps did.
And maybe the communication that does happen now is more effective because it's for a reason and a purpose, and it's not potentially some of the time wasting communication, which is good for culture and relationships, but maybe it's not as productive.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tony. We implemented Slack in our business about 4 or 5 years ago when everybody did. And after about a year, I pulled it out because what we were seeing was that we had people sitting next to each other, slacking each other rather than talking. And we went through this period of time where it was just being used for frivolous things, organising social events, where are we having lunch today, and so on. But we brought it back again for the whole business during COVID. And all of that sort of frivolous stuff seems to have disappeared now, and people are just using it for work-related matters. So, the level of professionalism in the usage of Slack has gone right up. And now if you get a Slack notification, it's important, and it won't be somebody asking you if you want a coffee. So I think that's really helped.
Oh, definitely. Look, we've got a couple of questions coming through on this stuff for you. Andrew Aston down in Melbourne asked, well, he said that accounting and programming and very task-oriented processes can work very well from home, but for extroverts that thrive off social interaction, maybe the office environment is better for them. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, look, we've got 16 sales reps and about 20 people in total in the sales organisation. 60 or 70% of those people would be extroverts. Our customer service team are almost all extroverts. None of those people want to be in the office. They just don't. And so, as I said before, they're being more effective. We're measuring them. We've absolutely knocked it out of the park in terms of sales during the COVID period. So I know that they're being effective. And when we ask them if they want to come in, with the exception of one or two, Audrey's always jumping on a motorbike and riding in if there's a social event or a beer being opened somewhere. And there's a few others that are making an effort to come in socially. But otherwise, when you just leave it to people to make their own decisions, as I said, they're voting with their feet.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Hey, and another question from Steve Ludlow, who said that what software, and I guess this is more for recruitment companies than a JobAdder, but well, first question maybe is, can recruitment companies benefit from using Slack?
Oh yeah, God yeah. Slack is for everybody. Slack is for everyone who hates email and who wants what I think is a more effective way of communicating. It is very important with Slack to have, I guess, guidelines as a business for how it is to be used and how it's not to be used. You don't want people creating private channels and you don't want non-work related stuff happening there. But if you are fairly strict with the usage of it, and if you create sensible channels within Slack, then it's incredibly effective. And people can mute certain channels and just tune into the things that they're interested in. But what I will do, rather than tell people the software that they should use, because I think business owners need to make those decisions for themselves. But what I'm very happy to do is share our technology stack, if that's useful. And just walk you through.
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. All right.
Share my screen again, mate.
Technology stack for everybody is the different types of software that run the business, right? Is in layman's terms.
Yes, that's right. So there it is. So that's our technology stack at JobAdder. There's probably 10 or 15 other smaller products that are not necessarily used by everybody, but for our back office, we've got Xero, which runs our finances, and we've got Employment Hero, which runs everything else, HR and onboarding. For our customer success team, they use Zendesk. That's where all of our tickets and cases are handled. So whenever anybody who's a customer of ours interacts with us through customer success, everything's being logged in Zendesk. We have a project management tool, which we implemented recently called Monday.com, and we use that for onboarding and project managing new customers as they come onto the platform. Our engineering team are on Target Process now, which is just similar to Jira or Atlassian. It's a suite of products for engineering teams. Our communication stack in JobAdder consists of the Google application suite. So we use Gmail and every other product in Google. So we use their Google Sheets instead of Excel. We use Google Docs instead of Word. We have Slack, which is mandatory. Everybody has that in the business now. And that's the primary way that we communicate between individuals and teams. We don't send emails as a group anymore. That just doesn't, there's very, very few internal emails now. They're purely used for communicating with external people. And of course, Zoom, we're using increasingly. Almost all of our external communications now are done by Zoom. And we have a voice over IP phone system called AirCall, which we do use a lot in sales. But as I said before, that's sort of being replaced now by Zoom. And people who are setting meetings with us are almost always asking us to come to a Zoom meeting. So we're using Zoom more and AirCall less.
And with AirCall, just a quick one on AirCall, do you use that instead of your staff using mobile to mobile?
Yeah, it's up to the individual team members if they would like to use their own mobile. And, you know, most people have unlimited call plans now. So we don't mandate this. I know a lot of my sales guys are just using their mobile and they prefer that. But for anybody else that needs to use a phone, such as the customer support team, AirCall is what we use.
Okay, and we just got a question. Zoom phone is just out instead of AirCall. Have you looked at that yet?
Yeah, our teams are using it, and I can see, I can almost certainly see us moving exclusively to that if things continue the way they are now.
Yeah.
People are just so comfortable with it,
Yeah.
and it works.
And even at the current share price, which is incredible, is Zoom still a buy?
Yeah, I think so. God, yeah, it's not going anywhere in the near future, and it doesn't have a lot of strong competition. So yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Sorry, Brett, keep going.
Yeah, no, that was all.
Yeah, oh, that's it. Okay, good. One more thing for you. So we talked about productivity and dashboards and measuring productivity as far as your business goes. Now, obviously, with a recruitment management system such as JobAdder, there's a huge amount of functionality that I know as a fact is not fully utilised by recruitment companies. How can you better performance manage recruitment staff in this remote working scenario using your a recruitment management system?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, one of the key things that we've done internally and we're encouraging people to look at is dashboards that just make performance of individual teams much clearer and easier. We have products within JobAdder that you can use, such as PowerAdder, but we also have APIs that people can connect any tools that you like to. I'll show you one that we've built for our customer support team. So I've got management dashboards that run the whole business. As I said before, here's an example of what my customer support dashboard looks like. And this tracks for me. It's up to the minute. It's pulling information predominantly from Zendesk. So we've connected all of the different SaaS systems that we use to this one platform called Cluvio, and we just display the information in real time so that everyone can see. So I can see here for the month of June, my customer support team has done 2,496 support tickets, which is up 14%. Okay, and the reason normally up would be green, but we don't want more tickets, we want less. So we've found that customers have been really engaging with us during the month of June. We've solved 2,310 of those with a 99% satisfaction rating. Whatever that tiny number there is, have said great feedback, and 2 people were not happy out of 370 who responded. So that's one of the metrics we track closely. The other metric that we track really closely in support is what we call first touch resolution. So you'll see this one down the bottom. And what that means is that when you interact with our customer support team, I want them to answer your question to your satisfaction in the very first interaction that you have with them. What you find with a lot of support teams, and we've done this in the past, is people will say, oh, let me look into that. I'll get back to you, or I'll do some research, or I'll ask a colleague. That just annoys people like mad. So we have this very important KPI that we measure the support team against. And that's just the support example because there's nothing confidential there. I'm happy to share it with you. But we have one of those for marketing, for sales, for engineering, for every part of the organisation. And I just think it makes life so much easier.
Okay, so any advice you have for a recruitment company creating a dashboard that helps them monitor and measure and manage productivity for remote workers?
Yeah, look, I think with your providers, it doesn't matter what you use, whether you're on Bullhorn or Vincere or JobAdder, everyone's got their own variations of dashboards. But there's also hundreds of third-party products that you can connect to all of your SaaS platforms that are not just recruitment specific. I see this world of dashboards and reporting going more generic and less tied to a particular platform. Because as I said before, with our dashboards, we've actually got them connecting to 8 or 9 different systems and displaying all of the information in one place, which I think is a lot better than having a separate reporting platform for every product that you use.
All right, and that brings us to the next conversation we wanted to have around productivity. And I've always said the real magic happens when good people are in front of good clients. Candidate-client interviews are the critical part of the whole process, and recruiters obviously have to interview candidates and then get them in front of clients, and then so the candidate can build rapport and the client can really assess fit. How is that transitioning in the video world now? How would you comment on, we've been forced to video interview, we've been forced to have clients and candidates video interview. How's the tech keeping up, and how is the effectiveness from your point of view?
It's working a treat. It's working a treat. Everybody on this call has made investment during this period of time exclusively through technology, haven't they? You know, nobody on this call has gone 3 months without making a placement. I know you've been doing them, and our systems are showing us that the placement numbers are great, really, really strengthening in the last couple of weeks. So we're doing it, and we're doing it without meeting face to face. So I think it's a fait accompli, right? This is already here. We're already doing it. Whether you previously thought you loved it or not doesn't matter. That's irrelevant now. This is the new world we live in, and it's here for a long, long time. There isn't just a magical switch off COVID at the end of this year and we're all back to the office. That is just not going to happen. We're going to have these sort of things in place for a long time. So I just think we just forget how things were 4 months ago and soldier on. This is the new world we live in. Embrace it, implement it like mad, follow the lead of people like Peter Aitchison and just get stuck in.
And get it done. And what about for expansion? Because a lot of smaller recruitment companies have always struggled expanding interstate with the 1 or 2 person office. Communication's difficult, culture, isolation, all these issues. Surely this solves that issue now that a Melbourne-based company or a Brisbane-based company can operate nationally now in a very acceptable fashion.
Yeah, I think geography is a very poor niche. My personal feeling is that recruiters want to be getting more specialised. We want, as employers, I want much more specialised recruiters placing people in my industry. I need them to know more than I do about the tech or the particular vertical they're hiring into. And we do have some recruiters like that who we use, and it just changes your world when you have someone who comes in who is connected to every individual in that category in Australia and who knows exactly where they're all up to at any point in time. So I think forgetting geography and focusing on specialisation and then trying to be across the whole Australian market is probably or the whole ANZ market is a much more effective way of working than just saying, no, we only work in Wollongong. I think less and less that will be relevant for people.
I think so. And I'm hearing some good success stories about people moving to their ideal locations now. Smaller firms, of course, but even, a great consultant that's billing, 400K plus and says, hey, I want to operate remotely from the Sunshine Coast. Now there's absolutely no reason why that can't really happen, is there?
There never was before. There never was before. This is the thing. It was us, right, as leaders, the old dinosaurs, wandering around saying, no, that's not how it's done. Bullshit. There's generations of recruiters who have known for at least the last 10 years that this can be done. And there are lots and lots of agencies, lots of clients of ours are doing it. I know Nikki Beaumont's based in Byron Bay. But
yeah. She just commented on it. She said it's working like a tree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to be, if you're a good operator, you're a good operator. It doesn't matter where you're based. And in fact, it complements, if you have a really well-rounded life and you're happy at home and you're spending more time with your kids and on and on and on. There's an endless list of benefits. Well, I think you're going to be a better producer and I think you'll be a more effective worker. Everybody wins. I think it's
I think so. Look, some of the comments coming back, we've just had Steve said that he's got a consultant who works from New Zealand in the Australian market and it's been perfectly fine.
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, that's an example. I've got a client in Sydney that has a team in Bali for lifestyle reasons, or that's where they're located. They're expats in Bali, and they bill just as well as their team in Sydney.
Yes, we had the first remote employee of ours was a lady named Brianna. Most of our older customers would remember Bri. She was with us for many years, and she came to me probably 7 or 8 years ago to resign, and she was one of our top performers. And I said, that kills me. Why do you want to resign? And it turned out that her boyfriend was a big wave surfer and he wanted to move to Indonesia and Bri wanted to go with him. And we sort of scratched our heads for a little while and said, why don't we just give her the laptop and just let her work from there? And that was 7 years ago. And none of our customers ever knew that she was based in Bali. She was as effective and as productive from there as she was anywhere. And I think that applies to almost every position in every company now.
I think so. And a lot of recruiters are probably smiling to themselves because when you're on holidays and you've got a placement about to drop, and it doesn't matter if you're on holidays in Bali or Hawaii or wherever you might be, and all of us have been caught with the client saying, is that seagulls in the background? Oh yeah, I'm on holidays, but I want to make sure this happens. And it did happen. Which brings me to one more thing, Brett, that around this, and that is the recruitment industry. We talk about it a lot at Captain's Table, has had high staff turnover over the years. It's it's never improved. It's always approaching around 50%. I'm wondering whether this might be one of the things that can reduce that turnover, because we'll have employees or staff members that are happier. They'll be more productive. They'll be more focused on what's productive. They'll be working in an environment they feel more comfortable. And recruitment agencies can source literally, as we've seen, from the region, and they have a bigger pool to source from now.
Yep. There's absolute certainty in what you were saying there. People who work for you remotely are far, far less likely to change jobs. We've seen that here at JobAdder in our business. Your retention of those people is almost 100%, for many reasons. One is they're just incredibly grateful for the opportunity. And two, it's quite hard to switch jobs. If you move out to, down to the Southern Highlands where I live, or up to Byron Bay where Nikki lives, you can't just waltz out and get another immediately get another job in that area. So you've got to be finding companies now that are willing to be as flexible as people like Beaumont Consulting. And that's what's going to really change the industry, I think, because anyone who doesn't adopt this working remotely policy is just going to have people leave in droves, and it's going to be really hard to attract employees, I think.
Yeah. I think so. Definitely. I think it's a real appeal to come into the recruitment industry, because it is one of those potential careers that can be done remotely, because it's now been proved that it can be.
Yep, that's right.
All right, I've got more for you, Brett. Andrew McGregor here. Andrew, thank you. How can we be effectively developing entry-level consultants? Now, that's a really good question, because they've been mentored, they've been sitting alongside senior consultants. Have you got any views on that?
Yeah, I think onboarding and introducing people into an organisation, there is so much value in face-to-face time with those. And what we do when we hire anybody remotely in our business is we fly them to Sydney. This is pre-COVID, but it's always been the case that we bring them here and they have 1 or 2 weeks of induction. The big American firms have been doing this for decades. If you join Salesforce, the first thing they do is they fly you over there for a complete brainwashing, and then they send you back home again. But I think we probably want to be thinking like that for onboarding staff and developing trainees. There's no reason that we still can't be having face-to-face meetings. You can still sit outside in a coffee shop with someone very safely and impart some of that knowledge. So I still think that there's value in that, in perhaps allowing in your budget, now that we're not spending as much on offices and on commuting, there is going to be more budget for being able to fly people in or get people together in person more often. And I think that's important.
Yeah, maybe the travel is more more celebratory, and company conference becomes more important than ever, and we can bring it back again to do that bonding and building.
Yeah, I think so. Who were we? Oh yes, Employment Hero. Speaking to Ben Thompson on a recent webinar with him. Ben Thompson is the CEO of Employment Hero. And one of the things that they're doing is that they're subleasing one whole floor of their office now. They've decided they don't need it. And they're going to set aside that budget for social events and for bringing people together, and actually, having people come into the office every quarter from wherever they are around the country. And I think that's a great idea. It's not reducing the total cost. It's just reallocating the budget and using it in a different way.
I think so, and I think that's one of the puzzles that we still haven't totally solved. If 100-person or a 50-person recruitment company is going to have everyone working from home and the lease does expire and all those empty seats are there, what next? What does that new hub look like?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a new WeWork. There's going to be a new model of office leasing that has to come out of this. WeWork was sort of a good idea, implemented and executed very poorly. And a lot of other issues with WeWork, but the concept is there, and I think we will see disruptors in this space that will come along and completely transform the way that we do leases. I almost swore. No, I'm going to swear. I fucking hate commercial leasing in this country, and it's the same for most countries. The fact that these people are asking you to commit and lock in to a 5-year lease for a fixed amount of space is just archaic. If you're a growing company, no tech company on the planet, for example, can operate like that. It makes no sense, because you literally have no idea what your numbers will look like. You'll either be 100 times what you're thinking you're going to be, or you'll be out of business. There's really nothing in between. And that's the same for a lot of companies now. You just can't commit to 5-year leases safely or securely anymore, and nobody should do it. So I think that whole industry has to be flipped on its head, and they really have to reinvent themselves very quickly if they want to get anybody coming back into these high rises.
Well, that's right. And we've always known over the years for a recruitment company, the two biggest costs are staff costs and the rent. Rent is number two. And it's always been one that's been fixed and hasn't been able to be changed. But here's the opportunity, right, to really reinvent the fixed cost base of a recruitment business.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Now we've got tons more questions coming through, but really interesting, and we might go back to some of them a bit later on, or as we near the end. But obviously, this is a very engaging topic, and we're getting more comments than just about any Captain's Table meeting we've ever had, which is fantastic because it's so important, and it's such a great opportunity. And you know, as bad as it's all been, and luckily the health crisis hasn't been bad from a health perspective, but it really has forced us all to reinvent ourselves, and in so many ways. And there's been a lot said about it, a lot written on it, but for the recruitment industry, Brett, I mean, it's a big opportunity, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think it's the single best thing that happened to the industry in the 20 years that I've been working at it. It's as simple as that. It has forced a complete reboot, and we're going to see the dinosaurs get moved out of the industry. The people that have been operating the same way, blindly refusing to change or modernize, they're just going to become irrelevant so much quickly now. I just think this is the most exciting time for recruitment, and you know, there's just no arguing about it anymore because we are all functioning and making placements, and you know, the industry is coming back very quickly, and it would be a huge shame if we reflexively went back to the way we were working.
Well, that's right, and I think we've always said that recruitment's about relationships and building relationships with clients and candidates and your team members. But that's still, we've proven that can still be done, right?
We're building one now, Tony. We're so much closer to you now.
Well, definitely. No, I agree with that. And all the Zoom calls I've had with clients, I'm building just as strong a relationship. We joke that, hey, one of the next meetings we'll go to somewhere more luxurious and more exotic to have the meeting. Yeah. And, you know, maybe as we talked about at leisure locations to do meetings at longer intervals, that's the way to go here. So, and also look, the other comment I wanted to make, Brett, and you will see this in your research, we know for a fact that all candidates want is a great experience and a great job. As long as we're delivering that using technology, they are going to be very happy, and potentially we can deliver a better experience, as you've spoken to before on the candidate experience. And then on the client side, clients have roles they need to fill. They want the best person. They're not really fussed on the delivery methodology. They're fussed on getting a great experience and the right person as well, right? Yeah,
exactly. If you're a client receiving somebody's resume, now potentially you could get the resume and a recorded Zoom call of the interview or snippets of the interview. I mean, I just find, you know, that would be so much more effective for me as a hirer. If I could watch 20 minutes of key points from the interview that the recruiter did with the candidate, I would love that. And it would make me so much more comfortable in knowing what the next step should be for me. So that's one very, very small example of things that I know people are doing right now, using the tech, using the conversations we're already having potentially recording them and then using that in our recruitment process. So I think video is just naturally going to become part of the recruitment landscape now, and hopefully everybody out there is already all over it and buying products that help them with that. But if not, we really all need to be, I think.
Well, you can't say this, but you were very humbly saying this a year ago before this crisis happened. You said the future is video, and you said the future is mobile as well. And many of us old school people are going, yeah, you know, that's for the younger generation. But now, once again, we're forced to do it, and it is very effective, and it's a way to differentiate. And that's another real, I guess, criticism of the recruitment industry. If we keep doing the same things the same way and just spamming clients with one-dimensional written resumes that are boring and long to read, they're going to go elsewhere. They really are.
Absolutely. I can tell you now, the TikTok generation doesn't want anything to do with your paper resumes and your stuffy little interview rooms. I can absolutely promise you that is just not the way that they want to work, and it's not the way they should work either. So it's great that the whole industry has had this knock on the head. I just think it's great. We can all wake up from from the coma with a fresh way of thinking. And it's just, I think it's the best thing the industry has seen. And there'll be a lot of innovation. There will be so much tech and innovation that booms out of the back of this now. There are people beavering away all over the world solving problems now for all industries, but especially for recruitment. So the industry is going to have the benefit of the younger generation of technologists who are just going to build tools and solve problems that that we're all experiencing now. Zoom is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of where this will all go. So
I think so. And the integrations that are occurring in the whole ecosystem, Brett, you know, there's tremendous amounts of integrations and partnerships and APIs and plugins and all this stuff happening that you see more than we see. Can you see it being all consolidated into single products, or as a recruitment agency going to need that tech stack like you have?
Yeah, it should never be consolidated into a single product, because then you end up with an Oracle or a Workday or an SAP, and we all know what that feels like. You just end up with a big piece of shit where nothing really quite works. You need to have the very best, the very the most nimble, effective tools for your business. Unfortunately, the technology hasn't been great in terms of integrations. For companies that provide tech, integrations are a real pain in the butt. They're expensive, they're time consuming, there's a lot of technical issues with them. But we're now starting to see tools like Zapier and lots of others that are just making it a breeze for products like ours to interact and connect with all the other products. And so as that technology gets better in the next year or so, every product will just magically connect with every other product. And that completely changes our world. It changes marketplaces, it changes everything. You'll just be able to make any products that you like using connect with any other product.
Well, that leads us to our last question here, Brett, and that's around the future recruitment company. What does it look like? And we've touched on many elements of this question in the conversation today, but from your point of view, what do you see it's going to look like going forward?
Happier, less stressed out, much more automated, better technology, much better use of people's time. I just see them as being a happier, more productive, more forward-thinking, progressive business than what they are today.
Okay, and that's provided not going back to how it was, which you've made very clear. You don't think that's the right direction to try and head back into the office and do everything the same way that we used to do it, right?
Look, some will, and I couldn't be. Yeah, I'm fairly clear on what will happen to those companies. In my mind, some will do it, and they'll pay the price for that. But everybody else needs to be thinking of a blend somewhere in between the very worst, period of COVID and pre-COVID. Somewhere in the middle there is the right mix for your business. It might be 1 or 2 days a week in the office. It might be no office, but somewhere there is the perfect solution for your company. And it won't be the same for every company. Everybody on this call has to come up with their own mix. And as I said before, Nikki Beaumont's often, doing a 4-day week, and a lot of people are watching that closely. Hopefully lots of people try those things to see if they work, because they're very easily implemented and undone. None of these things are end of life type scenarios. If you implement something and it doesn't quite work for your business, you can change it up. You can try something different. So I just encourage everyone to really go through a process starting now of saying, what's the perfect blend of home versus remote versus office for our business, and then just get about implementing it.
Yeah. No, really good advice. Really good, Brett. We're going to open it up for questions in a minute, but you asked me to remind you, you've got some statistics to share. If you have some more to share on this, because, you've made a very, very compelling case for what the future looks like and how good this change really is. But did you have some more stats that you wanted to pick up a lot of what you're saying? Yep.
Yeah, I've been sharing on LinkedIn a fair bit of the numbers and stats that are coming out of our system, but I just wanted to share with everyone on the call today, because we're all recruiters here. But I want to show you the consolidated set of data that came out at the end of last week, just showing how strongly things are coming back, and hopefully it'll just help everyone get off the call with a spring in their step. But I'll just share what the numbers look like for you. Feel free to hit me with any questions as we go along.
Okay. And if I've missed anyone's questions, we'll definitely get back to you later.
All right. So this one's showing job ad volumes. And as you can see on the left, the volumes that come through our system, these are job ads posted by JobAdder users in Australia and New Zealand. At the very worst, the very bottom of the COVID crisis, we were doing just over 10,000 ads a week, new job ads, which is down from 55,000 at pre-COVID. And you can see now that it's steadily improved every single week in ANZ. It's steadily improved. And we had our best week ever last week. And you can see those numbers, we're really not that far off getting back to pre-COVID levels. We're up to almost 80%, 75% of where we were before. So the market is, in Australia and New Zealand, it is nowhere near as bad as it could be, and certainly nowhere near as bad as some people are imagining it might be. There's a lot of work out there. It's still happening. This is the recruiter job order numbers. So these are new jobs being entered into the system, not job ads. These are roles or vacancies that are being created in the system by our recruitment clients in Australia and New Zealand. And you can see it's following exactly the same pattern as you'd expect.
Agency jobs. So this is jobs that agencies are advertising?
Yeah, not advertising. They may be advertising them, but these are roles that agencies are creating in JobAdder. And
in JobAdder, sorry. And have you got a breakdown by industry was one of the questions?
I do, but not here with me.
Okay.
We have, yes, I can publish that if it's easier. In fact, what I'll do when we get off the call, Tony, is I'll just share it with you and you can include it in your notes from the show.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah. So that's recruiters. Interestingly, the corporate market is following exactly the same pattern. So you can see that companies, these are all the companies using JobAdder and the roles that they're now starting to hire. And you can see that, again, those companies that are using our platform, and that's almost 1,000 now in Australia and New Zealand, you can see that we're back to over 80% now of pre-COVID levels. So that's super encouraging. Now, not all of those people are using agencies, but it's representative of the fact that companies are hiring again. And so by definition, there is opportunity there.
Oh, definitely. Just quickly, have you got the breakdown from Peter asked whether you have it by temp perm contract? Did you see that?
We do, yeah. I'll share that with you as well.
Again, okay. Just anecdotally, are you seeing any trends, temp perm and contract?
No, exactly. They're following exactly the same patterns. If you look at a chart for temp, it looks like that. If you look at a chart for contract, it looks like that. The only difference is that contract is back to like 90 to 95% of pre-COVID numbers. So the contract market has recovered a lot faster. The perm market is a little bit slower, but trending exactly the same way.
Okay.
This one here shows placements, and this one does break it down by temp, contract and perm. So what it's showing here is the number of people actually placed into jobs in our system last week, for every week of this year, but in particular last week. And you can see that in this week here, which ended on Saturday night last week, you can see that that number is really getting back up to where we were pre-COVID. So it's encouraging to see. We didn't really see a huge drop-off in actual placement numbers in our system. And these numbers, I can't show the scale for confidentiality reasons, but these are in the thousands a week. So they're very large numbers. We do about 40% of all the agency placements in Australia. So it's a large data set. But what's really interesting here is that we never really had a rock bottom. We had a big drop off, but it didn't sort of have a huge rock bottom like we saw in New Zealand on the next chart, and the US and the UK. They had these huge fallaways, whereas in Australia it came off, but it stayed steady. Now we're starting to see it come back up again. And I'm actually very, very bullish about July, August, September. I think they're going to be really big months if things continue the way they are and we don't have any major outbreaks.
Well, okay. Two questions that have come from that, Brett. First one was temp and contract pretty much staying in alignment with each other, and how's your definition of temp versus your definition of contract is one of the questions.
Yeah, so temp is hourly work, contract is extended. When people make a placement in JobAdder, the first thing they're asked is to define what type of placement it is. And so this is being defined by the client, not by us. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And the second one is, so looking very bullish now, what about when JobKeeper gets wound up?
Then everybody gets no, I don't know. I mean, you read so much on this, and I consume, like I'm sure you all do, I consume as much information as I can. from as many sources as I can. I worry about the housing market a lot. I worry about loan defaults and the finance markets a lot when we come out of JobKeeper. But I also think it's unlikely that they're just going to blow it up at the end of September. I think that they're going to have to look at ways of easing us back into this rather than a cold cutoff. But we'll have to see.
Well, it's not an easy question, but from your perspective, Brett, we're coping with this situation quite well compared to, say, the US and Europe and even South America and parts of Asia. Do we really know how reliant we are on those global markets, or can we get back to business and get into it and be relatively self-sufficient regardless of what's happening overseas? Or do you see our market very interconnected with some of those other markets?
Yeah, I want to try not to be too general here, because there are a lot of industries that are very tied to what's going on in the US. But those numbers there, you can clearly see the US and the UK have absolutely shat themselves in the last 3 months. The recruitment market it's just horrible. But you can see Australia has not been affected anywhere near the same way. So you have to say that because of our geographic location, and I guess just the fact that we're fairly self-contained, I think as an economy, Australia is fairly resilient, and we're not necessarily going to get drawn into the worst of what we see overseas. Even if things get really bad in the US, like I worry that they will, I think that we'll still see a pretty robust recruitment market here. And if it continues to stay at the same levels it's at, that's palatable for most people, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer, and I think that gives everyone a little bit of, I guess, confidence going forward, depending on what sector you're in, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Brett, was there anything else you wanted to cover before we open up to final questions?
Get into tech recruitment, that's all I can say.
Tech or contract, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of other, contract and temp, and absolutely agree with Greg Savage on all those things, but tech is completely underestimated in this country. The tech companies in Australia have hired right through this pandemic, by and large. We're now hiring again here at JobAdder, and they're just so resilient. So I think as much as you can, if you're thinking about diversifying your business, if you're looking at other industries to get into, tech companies are literally eating the world, and you really want to get that into your mix if you possibly can. I know there's a lot of you going, well, shit, that doesn't work for me. But if you are looking at other markets and you're choosing between accounting and legal, and just no. Get all over tech. That's my
It works. Yes, and temp and also offshore solutions. Of course, we haven't really touched on that. That's a big topic, but that's another way to support existing bases. Just a question around temp that always comes up though. What about temp in the remote working environment?
What do you mean?
The managing of temps, onboarding of shorter term workers, as opposed to full-on onboarding training, particularly of junior staff, which can always be a little bit more challenging.
So what are the things that you would be worried about? Why would it not be completely electronic? Are you talking about site inspections and those sort of things, or
all the old stuff that you had to do in temp?
That's not really my space. I don't know if site inspections and the physical aspect of onboarding temp is as important now as it used to be. There will be other people on this call much more qualified to answer that than me. But I do know that most of that paperwork and stuff that you do in temp now has been replaced, or should have been replaced in your systems. Candidate information capture and all of that should be electronic. As to if you need to physically walk somebody around a workspace, I would be not the best person to answer that.
Well, you just move the video around, right?
Don't fall in that hole. See that hole?
Watch out for that cable down there.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, we've covered a lot here, Brett. Thank you very much. I mean, gosh, so valuable, really, really useful information. Thank you very much. I hope everyone on this call has got some ideas and got some confidence going forward, not only in how the economy potentially could be in Australia, but also on the new way to work and remote working. I think there's some really good ideas from Brett out there on how to manage it particularly. So if anyone else has got any other questions, we're getting great session. Thank you from everyone here, Brett. So I think we might wrap it up, but you're open for anyone to drop you a note if they want to ask you a question. And
Yeah, always.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're very generous on sharing of information, so thank you very much. Yeah, really good to have you here today. Thank you, everyone, being here. Thanks for our supporters for supporting us, regardless that we've gone from face to face in big meeting rooms of 50 or 60 people at a time in Sydney and Melbourne, to webinars. And I know there are a lot of webinars, but we'll continue with the support of our sponsors to provide compelling webinars for you that really are useful for your business. So thanks to all our supporters again. And particularly to you, Brett, right from the beginning, JobAdder has been a great support to Captain Stable. Thank you very much. And look forward to reconnecting with you online soon.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.